Hey, everybody, welcome back to Big Blend Radio. We are so excited to welcome back award-winning author Julia Brewer Daly. She was on our show, I think was it this year? Don't ask me dates. But it was with her novel, No Names to Be Given, and that was through Admission Press. And now she is back with another novel, The Fifth Daughter of Thorn Ranch, and that's also through Admission Press. And this is a super cool book to read, just like her other one. This is set on a Texas ranch, a over 1 million-acre ranch. Like, we're talking a big ranch, and we're talking a lot of family history and all kinds of mysticism. So I encourage you to go to her website, juliadaly.com, and she is off and running with the book, so you can go get it now, and even the audio book, right, Julia? Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, so you're doing an audio book. It's out an ebook and hardcover, right? All three things.
And paperback,
And paperback.
all the
Wow.
versions.
Awesome.
And the narrator for the
Mhm.
audiobook did a great job with a slight Texas accent.
Oh, cool. I was gonna say, did you read it yourself?
No, I have too much of a Southern accent to read it.
Got your Mississippi roots going there, right?
Yes.
But you are based in Texas, in the wine country, the hill country, beautiful area. But this is set where in Texas? It's kind of like, reminds me of Big Bend area.
It really is. It's West Texas, Southwest Texas, on the border of Mexico and Texas.
Oh, but over 1 million-acre ranch. I mean, that is quite a monster to try and manage. And you've got Emma in there that's like taking the reins literally. And wow, the book gets mystical and interesting because it makes you think of the indigenous people of this country, and and also including Mexico, right? So this is some interesting history. But where did this story come from for you? Is it from living in Texas? Where did you get this idea?
When my husband and I moved to Texas 7 years ago, I just became enamored by the ranches here, especially those that have been in the same family for generations. And we visited King Ranch, and it was once, if not still, the largest ranch in Texas and many other states. And it did number 1 million acres. Wow. And now today it's only 850,000 acres. So I guess a ranchette by Texas standards, but 1 million acres. Can you imagine? That's the size of New York and LA combined. That would be like 4 counties. That's larger than some states on the eastern seaboard. And we traveled to Mesa Verde National Park. I'm sure on your travels you've been there as well. And I witnessed these incredible ruins there that look like condos built into the side of the mountain. And the guides told us they don't know why the ancient people left those homes, whether it was drought or disease or warfare. And so my imagination kicked in, and I thought, well, if they left there, they might have traveled to Texas. So the second novel's premise is that the heiress to the largest ranch in Texas stumbles upon an ancient people living on her property. And we have to think, will she escape or reconcile herself to the fact that she's going to be away from her family forever? So that's the premise of the story.
Wow. And, it's really interesting because, you talk about the cliff dwellers, and in this, they're underground, literally. It's like, it reminded me of Sinbad the sailor when he had that magical cave that he went into with all the formations and everything. It's just this mystical place, right? And pure and happy. It's kind of like a utopia in a way. When you first start reading, you're like, ooh. But I love that you're bringing that in, because there is mysticism involved with the cliff dwellings and ceremonial sites, like out in Chaco Canyon in northern New Mexico. I don't know if you've been there, but these are ceremonial sites. And then a little bit north in a town called Aztec, which is also small, but it's on river areas. They had more of their living quarters and then would go to the ceremonial sites. But people, like, they vanished. There's the Salida people up in Arizona and Tonto area. There's these, we don't really know, these people moved. Was it hunting? Was it water? Like you were saying, it could be all these different things, but we never quite know the real story,
Well, I was told all of my life that I was Native American. I thought that
Mhm.
I was Cherokee. So I told people all my life that I was, and I still identify as Native American, even though my DNA results say different. So I'm fascinated. And when I saw that, those ruins, I was just, awestruck by this
Mm,
people who built such incredible places without any machinery, without anything that we have in the modern world. And that
mm.
really fascinates me.
When we went to the Gila Cliff Dwellings in New Mexico, Southwest New Mexico, and we've been to Mesa Verde many years ago, and I remember getting supposed to do this little nature hike and then go up to the cliff dwellings, and somehow we ended up on a day-long hike somewhere. I don't know, kind of got lost. That was really cool. Um, and it just there, I mean, it is amazing how they built these things, and then also how they grew and how they did agriculture. It's like in the Gila cliff dwellings, they would go on top of the cliff dwelling. So they'd go on like on the roof, but and then go all the way down for water. And I'm like, these people were fit, you know? They didn't have
Eh,
vertigo like I do of being up top.
No, apparently not, but it's really a fascinating culture and it really draws me in every time. I just love seeing anything about it or reading anything about it.
Mm.
And I wanted to make sure that I stayed true to the culture as much as I possibly could. So I did have sensitivity readers from both the Native American side as well as the Latina side to make sure that
Mm.
I got these stories as accurate as possible.
Yeah, I like that too, that you also bring in the ranch family and talk about their connection to the land and then having them, really make hard decisions. And, it's a very it's it's forgiving but unforgiving with what they do, and they really do have to work with nature, not against nature. And so it's a lot of it's kind of like a coming of age story for Emma too, right? Or adulthood.
I think so. And I think she realizes that what she thought was a simple or unsophisticated culture really was a lot more sophisticated, that survival is very complicated. And there are still uncontacted tribes around the world
Mhm.
who are living these lifestyles. So I think it's really intriguing. And my reviewers are comparing it to Yellowstone meets The Last of the Mohicans or Outlander. And so, it's getting a lot of press for that because Yellowstone, of course, is so popular right now.
And it started off not being. Remember that? And people were like, no, I don't know. And I'm like, it has to be. It's got Ryan Bingham in it, and he's cool. I mean, talk about West Texas and New Mexico. He's like from that, that's his playground. But I just feel like there's such a connection to nature. Is that something dear to you? Is the land?
It really is. I grew up in a really small town, and my father always had farmland, and he was so connected to the land. He bought land anytime he could. And my mother said, we're tax poor on this land trying to pay the taxes. And he would say, well, they're not making any more of it. So he loved the land, he loved cattle, and he loved being on the land and growing these massive vegetable gardens that could feed the county. And we would have to sit there every summer and peel tomatoes and put up green beans and shell those peas. And we would just say, please, Daddy, don't bring any more vegetables home. He put us all to work.
So you got your hands dirty. So the other thing is it's very female oriented too. So going through, from your first book to this one, and so it seems that you have a penchant for giving women a voice of all ages.
I really do. And a lot of people who have read it say that I flipped the cowboy world on its head and made the women the the star protagonist in the book, and they own the land, and it's passed down from female to female. So that's a real shift in what normally went on ranches.
Because you also look at the women in history of the ranch too, going from the mom to the grandma, and kind of looking at, what their lives were like. And so I wouldn't want to mess with them.
No, and it's both of my books are being shopped to studios in Hollywood, and they're generating
Awesome.
a lot of interest because studios today are gobbling up these intellectual properties for all these streaming services that we now
Mm,
have. And they were very interested because the females are the major characters in these books, and
mm.
they really like that.
I like that you're giving them voice for sure. It's just, and it's something that, the first book was, looking at women that had to give up their children for different reasons, the three women, and not knowing, and that's it, that's a big thing women are dealing with. And I look at what's going on now for women. So, it's like now is not the time for us to be hush hush. We do need to talk about women's history, women's rights, women in the role of everything. And like women, on the ranch, it's always usually been like, oh, you're in the kitchen, you're
Yeah.
managing the kitchen. That's what people think. But there's so much more that women do on ranches, way more.
It definitely is. I've talked to so many people who have been on the same property for 5, 6, 7 generations here in
Wow.
Texas. And without the women, they wouldn't have survived. These were strong, strong women, and they were able to handle a lot of adversity that I don't know that I could do on
Mm.
a ranch these days.
Well, the other thing too, and you look at Texas, I mean, you could go through drought. There's huge windstorms, and even tornadoes, depending on where you are. And then the land is pretty rough. When you look at cactus, you're looking at rattlesnakes. Obviously, everybody, when you read the book, you'll see it. But you've got the texture of the land, man. You really do. And I love the desert, but as you know, we travel the country, and so you get that, like, all right, now we're in humidity, and I'm like, oh, it's nice and pretty and lush. And then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I want some desert heat. And there's something there. I think that's what's so cool about this book, because to me, the desert is mystical. There is something just very ancient about the rock formations, the geology, the sand. It's very spiritual to me.
It really is. And my husband says that there is beauty in the desert. If people can't
Mhm.
see it, they're just not looking closely enough because, when the desert blooms, it is
Oh,
just really, really beautiful. And we went to Big Bend National Park, and just to see the ruins of the log cabins that were there from these settlers, and to see the rocky soil, and to imagine them trying to create a garden there. I mean, I was
mhm.
just appalled at what they had to go through to try to exist there.
They do it though. I mean, it's pretty amazing, and things that, and they worked with the land. The indigenous people know the land, they work with the land, they don't work against it, and they have massive respect, for the natural world. So I think that's something we can learn to this day. I know that you've got a podcast now. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as if being a late in life author is not enough, I began a podcast called Authors Over 50, and it celebrates those of us who wrote our first book after the age of 50. And I've already launched 88 episodes just since March. And
Wow.
I've interviewed such interesting people, doctors and attorneys and MBAs, and those in their 80s and 90s who are still writing beautiful work. And so I guess I'm the poster child for it's never too late to write a book or learn a musical instrument or another language or start a business, because this stage of my life I call life's sweetest third. And so I just encourage everybody to join me on this journey to recreate ourselves and launch a second or third or even fourth career.
Absolutely. I mean, we live longer and longer these days, hopefully, but at the same time, it's like, why lock yourself into one thing? I mean, that's why we're the blend. I mean, we want to do everything. And I think one thing about that's so cool about writing is that you get to learn so many different things. You can have different careers as a writer. I mean, you got to be a ranch woman, writing this, right?
Well, yes, and we own a ranch here in Texas now, and my husband
Ah,
goes out there every day and works the ranch, and it's just like you said, it's just inspiring to be on the property and not to see anybody for miles around, and
mm,
to hear the quiet.
mm.
There's not a sound on the ranch unless an airplane flies over, and that's very rare. But just to see the property as it's been for hundreds and hundreds of years is really, it is a spiritual experience.
It is almost like having a national park, right? If it hasn't been touched too much, I mean, obviously ranching is you're touching land, but from what I know, the ranchers that I know, especially these family ranchers, they care deeply about, their livestock, or if they're doing, agriculture too, but they know that if you don't mess with the land, you don't mess with Texas, don't mess with the land,
And that's one beauty that we have seen here in our little neck of the woods are the young people, the children beginning so early to learn about livestock and to show their cows, their sheep, their goats, at the livestock shows. And they're just learning so much about the animals and their land and how to exist there. And I just hope that's going to continue for many generations to come.
Yeah, me too, for sure. So are you writing another book?
Well, I'm waiting to hear from the script writer in Hollywood whether they want me to give the rest of the story and begin where I left off in The Fifth Daughter, or whether they want me to go back to the first daughter of Thorn Ranch, which would be with the Spanish land grants. So we're trying to decide whether we go to the beginning or whether we tack a tail on this one that's already been finished.
Oh, wow. I can't wait. You've got to keep us all posted on this. We want to see more and see what happens. And maybe this could be one of those sagas that continues on and on and on. I mean, I grew up reading all these historical novels that just kept going with the family generations and I mean, it's drama, it's human drama. It's gossip, really.
It really is. And you can imagine each woman on that ranch, through
Mm,
the generations and what they would encounter in each generation. And so, and then I can also have the Native Americans at the same time, so we can have a dual timeline and dual protagonist, and I think it would be very interesting. My husband warns me not to get my hopes up because Hollywood could take the rights and then sit on it for 20 years. And I've told him I'm too old. I'd like to, be pushed in my wheelchair down the red carpet to see it on the big screen.
yeah, really. Absolutely. Yeah, though I think the way all these streaming things are that it does turn around pretty quick. I
Yeah.
mean, that was the interesting thing is like how fresh your novel is too. I
Yeah.
mean, even dealing with the pandemic, you make notes to that and I'm going, you put Netflix in there too. You knew what you were doing. She's like, I'm giving you a spot now. So that's no, it's cool. I think it's going to appeal to a younger set of readers as well, a younger generation of women. I think all generations, but I think it's going to appeal for younger women to also the ones that are out on ranches and out in wilderness areas, rural areas in the country, because we forget about them. It's like, and they live a different life than being a city slicker, so it's something for them to identify with and know that they're recognized, you
I
know?
hope so. I hope that
Mhm.
is the case.
Yeah. Well, everyone, again, the book is out now. You can go get both of them. So, The Fifth Daughter of Thorn Ranch. I love the Thorn Ranch too. That makes sense. It really does. And the other one is No Names to Be Given, both through Admission Press. And again, go to Julia's website. It's juliadaily.com. And that's DAILY, juliadaily.com. And you can follow her on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you back on the show. We just
Thank
can't get
you.
too far in that story. Otherwise,
Yeah.
nope, it's too magical, everybody. You gotta go
Thank
read it.
thank you so much for having me.